Just watching Thomas Sheridan's latest video today. I've linked it below. I've also linked below something linked in my video earlier today. The Jimmy Dore show talking about a strike that has started at the biggest fresh fruit and produce distribution centre in North America. That strike is not going to go away because a threshold has been crossed with those workers whereby it's easier and more expedient for them not to have the job than to continue as they're going. The primary issue with all of these strikes is money. They're underpaid, they're overworked, so they've said they've had enough of it, really. Thomas has a good video here. He mentions those who, from the moment the vote was cast on the 6th of January, said Trump has lost. I'm giving myself a commendable mention here. I'm giving myself a commendable mention because Thomas makes the very valid point that there are all of these ones who are still saying, oh no, Trump is going to come up and and something's going to happen on Inauguration Day. No, nothing's going to happen on Inauguration Day. Or, let's say some incident did happen on Inauguration Day. We can't rule that out entirely, that an incident might have happened. That would not have been the precursor to Trump returning to the presidency. You must understand the US Constitution as strongly as both Mike Pence and Donald Trump do. There is a line of succession to the presidency. When a new session of Congress and a new presidential term starts, that line of succession is also renewed. So, let's say Biden ceased to be president, Kamala Harris ceased to be president. It then goes to the Speaker of the House, I think, or it goes to this. There is a long, long line of succession. It goes through all of the various different members of Congress. If they're all wiped out, it then goes through all the various different state governors and state lieutenant governors. So, 50 states, 100 governors, lieutenant governors, however many members of Congress, vice president, president. That is the line of succession. As soon as the votes are verified on the 6th of January, the line of succession is drawn up. That's there, that's in place. Donald Trump's not going to be president. I'd said that on the 6th of January because I understand the US Constitution. So even if they managed to get rid of Biden and Harris and all of them, they would have to get rid of every state governor in the US and every state lieutenant governor in the US, then I wouldn't even be surprised if the line of succession continues through the state houses. I don't think it does, but it wouldn't entirely surprise me. So they have a line of succession drawn up in the United States constitutionally that will ensure that somebody is there who can be called upon to take over the presidency. It's actually very good. It's part of their republic system. It's not about democracy, it's about a good republic. I've been thinking, how do you get a majority, or at least a critical mass in any population, to openly choose something that is openly against their better interest? Because that's what's happening. How do you get this quorum? I wouldn't call them people, I'm not going to use the word, of the citizenry, if you like, of the masses. How do you get this quorum to choose something and celebrate something that is openly against their better interests? I don't know, but they've done it so far. And I'll get on to that. We're dealing with psychopaths. Joe Biden is a psychopath. Kamala Harris probably is a psychopath as well. I don't know enough about her, but I imagine Harris is a psychopath. Don't forget something about psychopaths. They're lazy, stupid, and incompetent, and they're cowards. So the notion that there's this big grand plan happening here. No, there's not. Sorry, there's not. This is like Europe in 1940 when Hitler invaded France and everybody had a complete conniption. Don't forget that the Second World War was as much a psychic thing as an actual military boots on the ground thing. France was very well armed when Hitler invaded. They probably could have got rid of him. They chose not to. For some reason. There was a psychic thing taking place in the Second World War. And there's a psychic thing taking place now, but this began long ago. It probably began, in fact, with the assassination of John F. Kennedy. We certainly saw it red in tooth and claw with 9/11. Here we have it again. I was talking to somebody today, and it's like what Thomas actually says in his video today. When you approach normies, approach with caution. So I said, we were talking, and I said, we met before Christmas. Yeah, he said, yeah, how are you? And he's a friendly enough guy. Well, I said, I'm very sad. I'm very disappointed. I said, my man Trump didn't get in. Blah, 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 blah. Did you see what they did? Blah, 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 blah. Yes, yes. I said, yes, 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 yes. I actually just enjoy listening to kind of the recording play out of them. Thomas is right. You will not convert them. Don't try. Don't waste your energy in converting them. But, you have to listen to thunder. You have to, you have to let this thing roll. So I just let it roll. And it is interesting to observe the people who have a bit of... You see, I do like to sometimes talk to normies just to see who might have a spark of doubt in them. They're the ones to watch. Forget about your man today. Forget about him. But then, Thomas talks about Dave Cullen and Stixie, and I'll include myself in this group. We're the ones who are inoculated. We are inoculated against the mainstream media and all their lies. So, as vaccinated people, we are vaccinated against the mainstream media. We can go in and swim in this mire of sewage that is the mainstream media. And we're safe. Stixie's safe, Dave Cullen's safe, Thomas safe. Well, I'm safe. It's okay. We will not... I will not be watching RTE and coming out of it then suddenly saying, diversity is our strength and wear a mask. That's not going to happen. This is also, though, I don't read the Irish Times anymore and I don't watch RTE, so Thomas is right about that, because they just annoy you, they get you down. It's not that I'm suddenly going to start converting to their rubbish by watching them, but it's just better not to. Watch T.G. Cahir if you want to watch a good Irish television station with nice material on it. T.G. Cahir's your one. It's really good, T.G. Cahir is. In February of 2020, I had an epiphany, although I had had an earlier epiphany in 2019. I've said this ad nauseum when I saw that RTE was telling lies to protect Varadkar. Yeah, they are. They still are, because Varadkar has once again admitted to some other act of corruption which anybody else would be arrested for. RTE are just refusing to ask the awkward questions of Varadkar. They're not going to start now. It's okay. Forget about it. This is, though, we'll get back briefly to what Thomas said about the people on the 6th of January saying Trump's going to re-emerge, it's going to be okay, he's going to get a second term. He's not. Many of those pro-Trumpers are actually in a territory that I'm very familiar with and have been very familiar with for nearly 7 years, the Freetards. Take a look at the crossover between them, the Freetards and the anti-maskers. I wonder how many of them are actually not wearing a mask. For me, the only thing that matters is that I don't wear a mask. Now, I have also, since December of 2020, latched onto a medical reason, and I'm claiming it validly, why I should not wear a mask. Because I have gingivitis, because my breath is excessively hot and sulfuric and bacteria laden. You'd have the impression that I don't clean my teeth. I clean them twice a day and floss them, but I still have gingivitis. I've been diagnosed with that repeatedly by my dentist, so there's no question that I have gingivitis, and it would be wrong for me to wear a mask, and my position is that it not only would it be wrong, but it would be socially irresponsible, because if I were to wear a mask, I'd get acne, I'd get eczema, I'd probably exacerbate tooth decay, I'd have difficulty breathing. That would waste medical time. I'd have to go to the doctor, I'd have to go to the dentist, and so on and so forth. By not wearing a mask, I'm not taking up time that a more urgent thing could take up. So it is socially responsible of me not to wear a mask. And, that's just the way that it's going to be. You actually have the right to breathe. You have the right to breathe freely, and you have the right to breathe wherever you go. Masks restrict that. This is why the legislation in Ireland in relation to masks put in so many get-out clauses that the state cannot be sued. Then the advice from the state after the mask thing came in August was, do not harass or accost people who you'd see not wearing masks. That was not altruistic. That was the state wanting to avoid being sued. So, if you're in a shop and somebody bothers or harasses you particularly badly for not wearing a mask, you can't sue the state because they've disclaimed it. Maybe you could sue the shop if the shop tolerates it, but I haven't seen any shop tolerate it. the other day, two NPCs. Now, there are normies, and then we go in further off into the more deranged territory of the NPCs. I believe that they're different, that there are four territories: the barking psychopaths, the NPCs, the normies, and us. The normies are a much more fluid group, and there are maybe some of them in there who can be saved. The NPCs, forget about it and don't even go near the psychopaths. But two NPCs, as I was leaving the supermarket, I was already outside. One of them said, "Why are you not wearing a mask?" I said, "Why are you not minding your own business?" "Why are you not wearing a mask?" I said, "Why are you not minding your own business?" And this carried on. Now, I kept walking. He said, "It's mandatory to wear a mask." I said, "It's mandatory to mind your own business." And so on. And then another one chimes in. "It's everybody's business when you're not wearing a mask." I said, "Oh, who do we have here? Oh my, who do we have here?" He said, "You should know that I had open heart surgery." I said, "You should know I don't care." I said, "If you're that much of an invalid, you shouldn't be out in a supermarket in January." I said, "Whatever to do with masks. Get out of my face," I said. That's how you deal with them. That's how you deal with them. You don't apologise to yourself. You have the right to breathe free. I have the right to breathe free. I'm doing the right thing by allowing my breath to circulate. And I think it's also a middle class thing to be apologetic for or ashamed of having bad breath. I have bad breath. I don't care. I don't care. I know lots of people with bad breath. They don't care either. Although I do make every effort to clean my teeth and to keep my gums disease free and all the rest of it, I still have bad breath. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. You're wearing a mask. You shouldn't be able to smell it. If you are able to smell it, it means the mask's a con. So I'm doing you a favour here. And, then we're getting back to the thing. How many people, what is it that takes people to choose something that's against their better interests? I don't know. It's incredible how many people choose things that are against their better interests. But this is what's happening. And the gaslighting is unreal. What is going to cause a jolt here? Probably the collapse of the economy and food shortages. That seems to be coming. Because if these food distribution workers in the United States, in New York, in Hunt Point, continue on strike for a few days more, that's going to have a knock-on effect. And the knock-on effect is going to be quite drastic. The Biden presidency is based on corporatism and globalism and the neoliberal military-industrial complex. We're seeing this now. The American military is being ramped up again. Biden's equally ghastly wife, Jill Biden, brought cookies to the army today. That's optics. That's because they know that they're going to be sent back out. But the Bidens know that they're doing something that Trump didn't do for 4 years. They're committing the military to the risk of death or very serious injury again. Trump was the first president since Eisenhower not to do that. Eisenhower was one of the very few presidents who was also a very senior military commander. Eisenhower knew how the army worked, and that's why the army respected Eisenhower. They knew he was one of them, and that he was not going to commit them to conflicts lightly. Eisenhower did commit American troops in the Korean War. But at the same time, he didn't do it lightly. He didn't do it lightly, and they saved South Korea from ending up the way North Korea is now. Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan hated communism. They hated it for a reason. I believe they hated it sincerely. But Trump has lost, and that's it, What I said in February 2020 is what I'm continuing to say. You do your protest by doing what I do and not wearing a mask. Now, I have a legitimate, as far as I'm concerned, and I say it seriously, I have a legitimate and serious medical reason not to wear a mask. As we're seeing now, and as more and more studies are coming out, I was right all along. But, this isn't necessarily going to, I'm doing my own thing, and that for me is good enough, not wearing a mask. The guard they were called, I didn't get into trouble. I haven't got into any trouble. I'm not going to break the law otherwise, though. This situation cannot last, no more than Hitler's invasion of Europe could last. It didn't last, ultimately. And it restored an equilibrium to Europe after 1945. It did restore an equilibrium that lasted literally up to 1989, 1990 with the fall of communism. And then the fall of communism itself released things that still haven't concluded. But these things come in cycles. It's like a pendulum swinging. At the moment, the pendulum has swung into woke land. Ignore it. Let it go. Trump has let it go. But don't forget something else. Trump was one of the first people on the 6th of January to accept that he'd lost the presidency. That, to my mind, was classic Trump. Mike Pence acted correctly. Pence acted correctly in not overstepping his mark as vice president to effectively select Trump for a second term. Pence's description of it was accurate. Pence then refused to use the 25th Amendment. His reasons for doing that was as accurate as his reasons for not doing what he did on the 6th of January. I believe Mike Pence is a man with his head very tightly screwed on. He may well be a contender in 2024 if he wants to. I wouldn't recommend it. But I'd be a monkey's uncle if Trump tries running again in 2024. I think he's done what he had to do. He also made sure Clinton didn't get the presidency. And believe me, for that, we're eternally grateful. We're dealing with a cult. How do you break through a cult? You do it in baby steps. That's what Trump is doing. Trump's presidency was based on incremental things. Not committing the military, building the wall, which he has built, and Biden is now reneging on. The wall is paid for, ready to be completed, and Biden is reneging on that. This is an abusive relationship. An awful lot of people are in a cult. Cults don't last. They always collapse. I think we are now at the start of watching the cult, believe it or not, watching the cult collapse. I said it would be 3 weeks for the Biden presidency to go sour. I think that's moving a lot more quickly. I've put up some ironic videos. Joe Biden's rainbows and unicorns, because that's what it's all about. It's about this Marxist notion that people have really had groomed into them since the 1960s. That once the nice man in government with his mouthpieces on telly tell you it's all going to be okay, then it's all going to be okay. What happens, though, when the food supply runs out? What happens then? Or the electrics go off? Remember Revenge of the Nerds, and when the nerds decided to close everything down. So there are the facts on the ground that are completely different from what the man in RTE or what Biden is coming out with. That's what you have to watch out for. And that's where probably it'll collapse on that. Because if you can't eat, well, then all the amount of nonsense out of RTE isn't going to actually feed you. So we're in the process of watching a cult collapse. This is a cult. Thomas says don't engage with normies. I respectfully disagree. I see it as a Stockholm Syndrome situation. I also see it as rescuing people from a cult. If you are rescuing from people from a cult, the most important thing you should do is to be there for them when they're ready to come out. That has not come yet, but it will. When it comes is a matter of speculation. I would be of the conservative opinion, and my own moderate approach to it would be later rather than sooner, but you don't know, because a whole lot of things seem to be spiralling out of place now with Biden. People are beginning already to we all knew this, but there is a growing, although suppressed with the mainstream media, consciousness that Trump was the last person who could kind of in his own way hold things together. Biden is senile. He's not a nice man. He's not very competent. He never had a platform. They did the optics of all the troops around DC because nobody could have shown up. And they're very, very, psychopaths are very focused, at least in the first instance, on optics. Remember, of course, how Goebbels had manipulated the optics regarding all of those rallies with Trump. We're dealing with a cult. Cults collapse. They always collapse. People come out. So when the normies begin to come out of this cult, forget about the psychopaths and the NPCs. I've divided those 4 groups. That's my analysis, but I think it's right. Focus on the normies. Don't condemn them. Don't be smug. They're smug now. Okay. Forgive. But when people find that they want to come out of this, and those people looking at it from a pagan angle have not harmed you, well then let them come out. Let them come out. It happened in Germany when Nazism collapsed. And people then said, oh, what did we do here? It happened with the Soviet Union when communism collapsed, and people said, oh, what did we do here? the cult now is, first of all, that cultural Marxist thing of the government knows right. And secondly, it's the pathological altruism that has infected the West really since the 1960s. The notion that we're doing something wrong, the notion that we're evil. That's when you're dealing with a cult. People will come out of it. And it's when they come out of it that we need to be ready to forgive them and say, look, we're not condemning you. You're not to blame for this. Who is to blame? Who is to blame? Well, let's look at RTE, the Irish Times, and the rest of the mainstream media. That's when the time is right. That's where we can assign blame. And trust me, if nobody else does it, I will.